Hey everybody, welcome to Bura Tech. In this episode, we're going to be talking about everything I learned about being a programmer and a game developer in the last 20 years. Alright, before we start the video, I want to make sure that you like and subscribe, and please share this video with the world. Remember that this channel doesn't do a Patreon, and all the money that we get from the digital products that you buy below goes into making more content. The best way that you can help out this channel is to subscribe monthly to Mammoth Interactive's massive training content. Get over 1,700 hours of content, and we release between 20 and 60 hours a month, so it's the best way to learn online. So let's talk a little bit about my roots as a developer and what I've learned in the last 20 years. Now, 20 years in tech is a long time. In fact, 3 years in tech is a long time. So in 20 years, there's been a lot of changing and there's been a lot of development along the way. So I started programming with QBasic way back in the 90s. I remember playing with QBasic. It was awesome, it was fun, but it was really difficult. And what I did is I actually learned Pascal at my local university when I was 12. Now this was a time before programming was cool, and I actually spent my summers doing this. I don't think these learning environments or these learning languages are any good, because nowadays you can just pick up a programming environment and go make a bunch of projects, and the coding languages are pretty easy. Now I get that back in the 90s C++ was really difficult for kids to understand, so maybe Pascal had its use then, but it definitely doesn't now. The next summer I did take C++, and the reason is I needed to go back for some more pointers. Now C++ was pretty good and I did enjoy my time, although back in the day you couldn't make anything that was any good, and what I wanted to do personally was make a 3D RPG in my bedroom with my 486. Now this was completely impossible to do, but I dreamed it up anyway. Right then, I figured out how hard it was to actually build something on a computer, and at the time you could pretty much make some text adventures and maybe some Visual Basic programs. That was another course I took at university. It was Visual Basic, and at the time there was a whole learn to code movement around Visual Basic, and it's funny because nobody uses Visual Basic today. Well, few people use Visual Basic. Lots of people use Visual Studio. Lots of people code. So after taking some programming courses at my local university during the summer, I did go to high school, and there we learned C++, and myself and my group were way ahead of the class. But the one thing that happened to me, and I don't want it to happen to you, is that I got some really bad marks in high school. In fact, it was because my teacher was not very good. I had one good teacher, and then I had some very bad teachers after that, and I got some pretty terrible marks. These marks were so bad, and I actually failed some tests, and I'm not a failing student. I did so well in other courses, but I failed in programming, so I left it alone for a while. And remember, this is the early 2000s, so game engines were practically non-existent. The nearest thing that came up was maybe GameMaker, and that was at least a couple years off. And even then it was terrible to use, so you didn't really have options. I decided to focus my life on little other things at the time. I did make a few websites here and there, and I did have a few friends that were web developers, but for some reason I never really decided to close a deal. In retrospect, I probably should have tried a little bit harder. This is the one thing that you need to do when you are learning to code, is you need to learn how to get new clients immediately. Even if you can do a very simple thing like make a basic landing page, you need to try and get a client to pay you some money. Now, of course, in the 90s, no one knew what they were doing and no one knew how to make anything, so people paid a lot of money for very little and poor quality stuff. So year after year I was building websites, and instead of coding from scratch I decided to use a bunch of WYSIWYG platforms, because I thought personally that if you could just use a WYSIWYG platform, then there was no need to become a web developer. I should also mention that I was in high school around the dot-com bubble, and what that means is that there was a lot of computer science majors that were out of work in the city that I lived in. In fact, I remember one time going out to dinner with a bunch of friends before a movie in high school. The server had a computer science degree, the hostess had a computer science degree, and the cook had a computer science degree, so I didn't think a computer science degree was actually any good. Wow, times have changed. Of course, this was an anomaly, and I decided to study something else in university. And the one thing that I learned from this whole experience is just because you get bad marks in high school because you had a bad teacher and that there was some kind of market bust doesn't mean that your career should be put on hold. You should always try and do something that you always want to do. Coupled with the fact that it was just way too difficult to make software in your bedroom, and I personally like making software all by myself in my room. I'm one of those people that can sit in front of a computer for hours and hours on end without any human interaction and just make something. Now I'm done university and it's time for the 2008 global recession. Yay! So in 2008, I decided to buy a game engine for $1,000, and this was a terrible idea and I don't recommend doing it. Nowadays you can just download something for free and try it out, but back then it was a different ball game, and in retrospect I shouldn't have bought this engine. I could have downloaded Unity for free, but this engine was better than Unity at the time, and now this engine's open source. It was a Torque game engine for anyone who wants to know. So I downloaded it and I tried to make a bunch of games and they all completely failed. In fact, it was terrible, but I did learn a lot of cool new things along the way, and I was still applying for lots of jobs, but very few people were hiring, and I decided to just make work as a freelancer instead. And in 2010, I released my own Xbox 360 game, and it was awesome, and my career skyrocketed from that point. And what I learned from that is once I released something to the world, then the world tended to take notice of that. At the time, a lot of people said that, you know, if you don't have a computer engineering degree, you would never become a coder, and this is so far from the truth. Nowadays, it's what you can do as a coder. Of course, having a computer science or a computer engineering degree works, but you really want to make sure that you can perform just like an athlete. There is no multiple choice test to be an NBA player. So after having released that game and a few other failed projects, I did pick up a lot of freelancing work, but one of the things I noticed is that literally everybody said, how do you make a game? Literally everybody said that. I had released about 40 iOS games at this point, and everyone's like, I don't care about your games, I just want to know how to make it. And it was literally everybody that said this. Everyone. So what did I do? I actually made a course on Construct 2 on how to make games from scratch. That was literally make the game, do the art, do the music, complete games from scratch, and my career took off from there. And since then, Mammoth Interactive has sold over 700,000 courses worldwide. It's been amazing. And along the way, I've had a few other games that I've made here and there, and I've done a lot of freelancing here and there, but for the most part, it's been mostly the courses after that. And let's just go back to 2010 for a moment when I released those games. I used a game engine called GameSalad, which was awesome because you didn't have to code. And one of the hardest things about making games or software is the coding part of it, and I used GameSalad to get these games out the door. One of the things that's kind of been consistent throughout my coding career is I always try to find the path of least resistance. Coding is inherently hard, game development is inherently hard, so why not find the easiest path to resistance? A lot of people, they choose to go down the hard road, which is fine, but that's not for me. Even back in the 2000s using WYSIWYG website editors, this was the path for me because I didn't want to spend all my time with code. If I can do something that gives the same amount of value in 1 hour versus 10, I'll always choose that 1 hour, and I highly recommend that you do too. Always choose a development environment that is easiest to get what you're doing out the door as quickly as possible. This is especially true if you're working by yourself. I've had so many failed projects over the year because either the scope was too big or I lost interest or whatever, and because of that, the project's not out there. I have so many projects that are on my hard drive and my cloud that are completely failed and will never see the light of day. But they were learning experiences. And this is the other thing that you need to understand, and the thing that I learned. You always want to fail forward. You want to try new things, and guess what? It might not work out, but at least you learned something. The problem is that all the pros know this, but school punishes you for making mistakes. I always thought that school should be more of an additive process versus a subtractive process. For example, you start at 100% at the beginning of each semester, then you get things wrong and that whittles down your mark. What if it were the other way? You start at 0% and you gain. It's just like experience. Why aren't we doing this? Does your school do this? Let me know in the comments. So over the years, I've learned so many things, and the number one thing I've learned is that, well, really technology changes, and that has a huge impact on your ability to make money as a programmer. The reason is that you and your skills can become obsolete because technology changes. So that's why Mammoth Interactive is still in business. It's because that people always need to skill up. Have you been programming for a long time? I want to know. Please write your comments down below. I'll be sure to read them all. So if there's two things I've learned over the years that I can definitely tell you will help you in your career path is to, number one, get products out the door and add them to your resume. This is the number one thing that's made me the successful programmer and entrepreneur I am today. There's no point in having your projects sit on your hard drive collecting virtual dust. The second piece of advice is that if you get frustrated or burnt out, take some time off. Chances are you'll come back to coding and absolutely love it. This has happened to me many times over the years, and I've always taken some time off and I've come back. So what am I doing today? Well, I'm making games and I'm making courses still, and I'm also making a lot of YouTube videos. You can see some of my games here, and you can also see my super minimalist website that I'm extremely proud about right here as well. You can check out Mammoth Interactive's Twitter @Mammoth Company for all the company updates, and you can subscribe to our mailing list. Also, please be sure to like and subscribe to this video, and if you know a coder, then please share this video with them. If you also know somebody who wants to code, please share this video with them as well. Remember, this channel doesn't do a Patreon, and all the dollars that we get from the products you buy below goes into making more content. The best way to help out this channel is to subscribe to Mammoth Interactive's massive online content. This is the best way to help out our channel, and it's the best way to make sure that we produce the quality content that you're accustomed to. Thanks for listening, and I'll see you in another video.